Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Looks like we got a lot of folks on today. We've got, look, Mr. Fife Dog from Orlando. And we also have Ashley from Orlando. We've got a bit of an Orlando presence today. Welcome to Cookout. Jordan from Jamaica, thank you so much for joining. Um, I am not going to be able to say your name, buddy. Presence Law, you got to help me. But he says he just got, he's starting a new job as a junior PM tomorrow. So awesome. Congratulations. Everybody congratulate him. MG, Adam, thank you all so much for joining today. I'm really, really excited because this is going to be a first for our channel. I've invited someone very special to come and join us today to speak to us a bit about influence. And because we've been doing a lot of videos lately about getting project management jobs, I thought that it would be really great to talk about what can you do in the first 30 days to hit the ground running. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Colin on and I will give him an introduction. Colin, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And Colin is joining us from the UK. And as you guys know, I am in Canada. So we're doing a cross-Atlantic interview today. But I met Colin about 5 years ago. We were actually both in a course together, weren't we? And we both started to sort of get very interested in what each other was doing. And I have to say, I've had lots of really fantastic conversations with you, Colin, over the last 5 years. And every single time I talk to you, you give me more wonderful food for thought in the realm of establishing myself with presence and influence. And I thought to myself, I really, really, really want to get you on the show to talk to my audience, help them, figure out what they need to do in the first 30 days. And when I proposed this to you, I remember you were really quite excited about it, actually. I'm going to ask you to actually tell everyone, why did you want to come on the show today and talk to the audience here?
All right, thank you, Jason, and welcome to everybody as well. I am excited to be doing this, partly because I've run an awful lot of projects and programs myself, so I know a little bit about what you might be going through, albeit it was a little while ago. But also because of all the work I'm doing and all the conversations that I'm having, starting a new job or a new role is so critically important. And I think, as we put out on the sort of little intro video a couple of days ago, and worth reiterating, it's a time of very high expectations, very high stress, and limited capability. And so I think it's a very, very important point or time to actually get right. And if you can take on board some of the ideas we'll be sharing today as well, as you're contemplating a new role, if we just reduce the stress that you're feeling by just a little bit, that will help you to perform at your best, because you wouldn't have been given the job if they didn't think you could do it. And so let's clear perhaps some of the distractions out of the way so that you can fly through the first 30, 60, 90 days, with ease. And that's the ultimate goal. So that's why I'm excited. But I have to say, Jason, what is it that excites you about having this event and doing this and bringing me along? What have you let yourself in for?
Well, one of the things when I started PM Perspective, it was because um, in the 20 plus years that I've been coaching and mentoring project managers, the part that I love the most is just to see people, um, the light bulbs go off, right? And to really have them um, go into a situation armed to be able to succeed in the way that they had envisioned. And like I had said earlier, I feel like what you have to offer, and by the way, folks, Colin comes to us with many decades, 20 plus years of experience in coaching senior executives. He's authored 7 books on leadership and influence subjects. I'm just absolutely so thrilled to have you here. And so really, I'm just excited for the audience. I think it's going to be a fantastic discussion. And this is a great segue into, I'm going to need the audience to help us out here a little bit. whenever Colin and I say, "Oh, we're going to have a quick 5 minute conversation," we end up being on a conference call for like 30 minutes to an hour. We just we tend to dive into the minutia, which I think is going to be really great for the audience. But I'm going to ask the audience to keep us on track. We're going to talk a little bit about what some of your goals should be when you first arrive on the job. And by the way, for project managers, first arriving on the job isn't just when you start with a new employer. It's every time you get a new project assigned to you, because in that case you have a new team, you have a new executive sponsor, a whole bunch of new people that you're working with. So we're going to go into what your goals should be in the first 30 days. And I'm hoping that maybe we take about 10 minutes, 15 minutes to talk about that. And then really, I want to take more time and talk about the common mistakes that people tend to make. So get your pen and pencil ready, especially for those of you who are about to start a new project or get into a new organization. Write these things down, because you may or may not be experiencing this in the near term. And then afterwards, Colin, I'm hoping that I can get you to talk a little bit about, you put together in one of your books called um, um, what is
You
it?
want about the
A
project management guide?
Project Manager's Guide to Influence. You have put together a process on how to actually sit down and think about, who are your stakeholders in this new world, and then you analyze what you have to do and you put together a plan. So I would love to invite you to talk a little bit more about that. And ladies and gentlemen, if we're going to shoot for about an hour, and we'll also have Q&A throughout. But if we just don't quite get to all of the material, Colin has expressed that he's willing to come back and talk to us again if we have more topics to cover. So thank you so much
But
for
only
that,
if they
Colin.
come up with some really challenging questions for us.
Yes, that's right. That's your challenge, right? First of all, not only that, but you have to hit the like button, because I also want as many project managers out there who are looking for this to find it. So help us out with YouTube and smash that like button. And yes, please, while we're talking and you're thinking about, you have a question, type it into the comments. I will bring those comments up on the screen, and we will do our absolute best to help you with your specific situation. So, without any further ado, let's talk a little bit about what your goals should be when you're first starting in your new role. And Colin, you and I talked a little bit the other day about what what we thought we might talk, because there's so many things we could say. And one of the first things you had mentioned to me was there's a concept of first fit in and then stand out. Um, I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about what you mean by that.
Yeah, certainly. And don't be distracted by the simplicity of this nor the obvious nature of it, because I think it is something that a lot of people have naturally got in their mind. They want to make a good impression, they want to stand out, but also they're very acutely aware, particularly at an emotional level, about the need to fit in. But I'd like to, certainly the coaching that I'm doing, I want people to put a lot of attention onto this and come up with very clear plans and reflect on it as well as they're going through it, rather than just launch into the job with the hope that they will manage to nail this. And what I mean by this is it's informed by group psychology, that when you get into a new team, unless it's a new team and everybody's new, you're the outsider.
Yeah.
You're the new kid on the block. You are the person who everybody is looking at and probably talking about, maybe for a few. Oh, who's this new guy? Have you heard anything about him? Or what's he going to be like? Or, oh, not another one from there. And so all of these things can be going on. So they've already formed a view of who you are and what to expect before you even get there, which may be good or it may not be good. So what I like to advise people to do is to put some conscious effort in and maybe talk with a coach or a mentor or a very good friend about what is your strategy going to be to fit in first. Once
Mhm.
you get your feet under the table, once you start to form some relationships, maybe even friendships starting to emerge, then you can start with your standout strategy. So once you get to know the lay of the land, you start to feel a little bit more comfortable, because otherwise, if you go in there trying to stand out too quickly, you're going to upset everybody.
Yeah.
I would put money on it. You will make some mistakes. You will upset people. Oh, that was going to be my idea, and he's just stolen it. And
Yeah.
and then the politics can start, and then you're on the back foot.
Yeah.
And therefore, despite your enthusiasm to get going, hold back a bit, make some friendships, get to know the way things work there, and then you can start to gradually stand out. Don't try and do it too quick. But the motivation will always be there, and the natural enthusiasm. Just calm it down a bit.
Yeah, it's a good thing to remind. I mean, it just makes so perfect sense. I'm sure most people who are hearing this are thinking, "Well, yes, that makes total sense." But we tend to forget about it. I think the emotional state that we're in when we first arrive is, I need to show everybody
All the things going
how
on.
yeah, how wonderful I'm going to be for them. And you have to calm that whole nervous energy down and just go with the flow a bit. And like you said, let's make those connections first and then figure out how we're going to
Yeah.
stand out.
Sometimes I've got to jump in with this one. Sometimes, Jason, that if your hiring manager or boss has maybe bigged you up as well, saying, "Oh, we need you so much. The team needs you. We need your creativity. We need you to change everything and be a change agent." So it's almost setting you up for
Yeah.
just calm down, just work out how you're going to do it, fit in, then shine, then start flying. And it only needs to take a week or so.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, as we go through this, we should probably remember to talk about the time periods we're talking about here.
Mm.
Obviously, you don't want to spend the whole 30 days being friendly with everybody because at some point, someone's going to say, "Hey, that's not what we brought you in here for." Um,
That's right.
yeah. So the other thing when we were talking about this was spending a lot of energy learning about the context of your role. Can you talk
Mm.
a little bit about, because I think that that's one of the things that most PMs they neglect to do, right? And like, what do you mean by context, and how do you know you've got that right?
Well, one of the bear traps for people who have come up through the project management discipline is the usually very clearly defined endpoint, goals, deliverables, and stick with the scope, deliver, 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 which is quite an isolationist model or mode of thought. The problem is, as I expressed in the Project Manager's Guide to Influence, you've got to be aware of what's going on around your role or your project so that you know how it may be disturbing, dare I say it, the politics of the organization. So, what is it competing against? What is making things more difficult so that you can be more attuned to where the risks might be? So that you could be delivering on an objective that very quickly is distancing itself from where the organization needs to go, and you may not know it, and that's may not be a problem for you. But if you're totally focused on that particular deliverable and that project no longer becomes viable, why would they want to keep you?
Yeah.
So you're at high risk. If you've shown political awareness of the context, and how your project fits within the program, within the whole suite of programs that may be running in a large organization, and fits within the organizational strategy, you will have a lot more awareness of why you're doing what you're doing and what you may do that will upset the politics for your boss or
Yeah.
for your colleagues, some of your stakeholders. So it's really important to not spend too much time, but have again a very clear objective. Week one, week two, how does this work fit within the whole? And the more you can find out about that, the better. But again, maybe 10% of your time, just have those questions in your mind when you're starting to get to know people. Well, why does this job even exist? Why does this team exist? What is it? How does this fit within the strategy of the company, in the marketplace, or a response to the market? And I think that's just, again, these are things that you don't have to do, but if you don't do them, you will rue the day,
Yes,
because it
absolutely.
makes you
Yeah.
more vulnerable.
And it's funny. I say, and this I get this a lot with more junior PMs that I work with. Um, it never occurs to them that there's going to be people out there who actually do not want this project to succeed. and maybe even for some valid and good reasons. But you won't know who those people are and the ways in which they might get in your way until you figure out that context that you're talking about.
Because it
And
could
yeah,
be as simple as somebody you're trying to communicate with, one of the stakeholders, just not responding.
yeah,
If you start to get
exactly.
an idea they're not responding because this cuts against their agenda or their role or their project, then you might take alternate approaches rather than just wait for their email to come back in.
That's right. How would you suggest um, people actually go about doing this? So I imagine there's folks who are thinking to themselves, okay, yeah, they've just told me I have to figure out the context. I mean, what's your number one piece of advice for a brand new PM? Like, how do they get their finger on that pulse? Like, what
Well,
tools do they use?
build a process. I mean, most project managers are quite naturally attuned to processes. So work out a process of information collection. So
Mhm,
what sort of things could you need to know? And I would say even before you get to the job, maybe 3, 4, 5 weeks, I mean, arguably before you even get selected for the job, you need to be doing this.
mhm,
The organization that you're going into, what's the public strategy? What's the
yeah,
public policy? What is it in the news and online that they're shooting for? And
mhm,
then start to think, so how does this work within it? And then when you talk to your hiring manager, or you start to talk to your stakeholders, or maybe even your new colleagues, ask the question, so help me understand how this all
yes,
fits.
yeah,
It's no big, and quite often they'll love to talk about it, and then you might start to get some clues as to the history as well, and what's going on
yeah.
in politics, and what's going wrong, and once you open them up with good open questions within your process of inquiry, they'll sing like a canary if they like you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the things I think in the most recent live stream that I did was all about interviews. And one of the most powerful pieces of advice I think that I gave in that live show was when they ask you, "Do you have any questions for me?" The number one mistake people make is, well, no, it's okay. I got all my answers. Like, absolutely not. You want to get them to start talking to you about all of the things that are keeping them up at night and whatnot. And you absolutely can in that interview look at them and ask, so who really wants this project to succeed? And are there any folks who are maybe from a change management perspective are a little bit afraid of this project? And you know what? You'll find that not only will most interviewees or interviewers actually open up about that, but the other thing is that they're going to love that you asked that question, right? And so I would say,
Sorry, Jason, particularly the more senior you get, the more necessary that level of competence is required to be able to understand the world of the stakeholders. And Diane Dromgold, who sponsored the Project Manager's Guide to Influencers, big heavy hitter in Australia, but does national level, global level projects as well. She said that the number one thing that hirers are now looking for at a senior level is people who have the capability to work within the political framework of the organization
yeah,
and to get things done. It's not about the administration of the projects. They can get administrators to do that. It's people who can look around, look at that bigger context, understand the life of the stakeholders, and be able to engage constructively with integrity and with character.
yeah.
But maybe you should get there on the show and talk more about that.
Yeah, no, actually I think it's a good segue into some of the later material that we have planned, and we'll never get there if we
Yeah.
don't if we don't keep going.
Okay.
So you talked a bit about being a keen observer. Now this is I talk about this a lot with the folks that I coach, um, and I think it is so key. Talk a bit about what that looks like. I mean, how do you become a keen observer? What do you look for, and what does that mean to you? Like,
I
what
think
do you get
that,
from that?
I mean, for me, it's almost like becoming a people watcher, which is
Hmm.
probably a term that most people are familiar with. That the ability to be able to sit back and just watch, and particularly talking about watching the interactions of your new colleagues because how they relate to each other, how they like each other or hate each other, how they bitch or whatever they're doing, just watch it. Just
Yes.
watch what's going on, because you are landing in a group dynamic, and that may be very tense. It may be very collaborative. It may be all sorts of things. But you are now about to become an actor within that,
Hmm.
and so you've got to know who the ones who are out on a limb. Because if you
Yes,
get too close to them, you may alienate all the others.
that's right.
So who are the in crowd? And how, or maybe there are two 50-50, and they're two at war. And are you going to be in the middle, one side or the other side? And, at day one, you don't know.
Yeah.
So you've got to, again, as part of the fitting in process, is just sit back on watch and maybe ask a few, sort of subtle questions about, oh, it doesn't look like that's going well then. And maybe
Yes.
something will open out a little bit more, or I notice a bit of tension between what, help me understand what's been going on there. I don't want
Yeah.
to make a mistake. I don't want to upset anybody in my drive to get some results and things like that, or I don't want to step on other people's toes. So help me learn. And they, particularly if they are initially sort of impressed or pleased for you to be there, that, oh, this person looks like they know all we really do, they will be keen to help as well. So don't forget that you're not on your own on this. They will be looking for how you might be able to help or hinder them. So you
Yeah.
can just start to ferret it out, start to sniff it out, and look at what's going on. And I think that's the if you can do that well and start to notice where the tensions are, where the friendships are, you will be more accurate in your interventions when
Yeah.
you get to need to do something, and less likely to make mistakes.
Yeah. I always say to people, there's a few things that I say to look for. Um, one is who is asking questions and who is not, right? Who is paying attention and who is on their laptop or whatever typing out emails. That can tell you a lot. When a particular person speaks and puts out an idea, how many people around the table say something like, "Oh yeah, I think just like they said," or "as they said," or "let me add to that." How many people are in support of that individual and their ideas,
Mm.
versus someone speaks and then there's a lot of dissenting opinions? That could also happen
Or rolling
in a
of
meeting.
eyes.
Rolling of eye, yeah, absolutely. And I will often go with when I have more junior team members with me in meetings. I love this. It's almost like a game, and you kind of have to enjoy this game. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't do politics, and then we're going to get into that in a little bit. But after the meeting, I always sit down and say, hey, did you see how quickly Jane agreed with Michael every time he said something? Like
Mm.
immediately, what do you think's going on there? And so this is the kind of person I think you have to become. And so, like, I totally agree with you, Colin. Being a keen observer is
One of my
huge.
favourites, just to complement what you put there, because I totally agree with everything you said there, is that my favourite one is when something controversial is said in a meeting, observe who everybody looks at next.
Yes, yes, absolutely. That's
Because
huge.
that will be the biggest influence or opinion. Oh, how's he reacting, or how's she
That's right.
reacting to it? But enough
Absolutely.
of me. I mean, what have you got in terms of goals? I mean, what would you say would be the top three? Because mine's fitting in context and
Yep.
really looking at becoming an observer. What would you say, Jason? Because you've got a lot of experience here as well.
So I would say that the very first thing I like to try to do is to build trust. And when you arrive on the scene, almost everybody is going to be watching and trying to figure out, will this person hurt me or will this person help me? That's especially the team members who will have to work with you or for you and who are answerable to you. Like they're immediately going to try and figure that out. Which one are you? Are you going to help me or hurt me? And the mistake that I see people making, as far as their first 30 days, is they don't build that trust. And a couple of things I would say there are the keys to building trust are: A, don't talk about the kind of person you are. I see people do that all the time. Oh, I'm the kind of person that really loves this or hates to do that, or no, I'm not that kind of person. I see this happen a lot because people want everyone to think a certain thing about them. So when they arrive, they're all explaining themselves to everybody. Um, it's not about what you say, it's about what you do. So when you arrive, I think that the very first thing you need to do is show a genuine interest in all of the people that surround you. And I'm going to focus on, and I say this a lot in some of my other videos, genuine interest is very key. People are born with some pretty good bullshit detectors, and those little detectors will go off very quickly if you're just going through the motions. Look at everybody around that boardroom table and find a way to be genuinely interested in who they are, what they're doing, and what's important to them. And then they will see that, and they will see how you're behaving, and the fact that you care enough to think about, like, who are they, to care about who are they, they'll begin to trust you. They'll at least they'll be open to the possibility of trusting you. So building trust, I think, is very key. So don't talk about who you are, just show them that you care. And I think that's of paramount importance.
I mean, I totally agree with that because it's about giving them an opportunity to express themselves as well. I like the example you give of, people who are, trying to say, this is who I am and this is what I am. You're trying to make a good impression,
Yeah.
but you're trying to potentially protest too much,
Right.
you know. And I think that's where I mean, yes, there's got to be some communication about who you are and where you come from, but never mind all of that. What about you? What's
Yes.
going on here? And I want to because I don't want to upset anybody when I come in here. So can you tell me what the story is, or how we got to this? And people will open up if you give them half a chance. But I really love what you're saying there about genuine, and
Yeah.
that genuine interest has got to be deep. You really
Yeah.
have got to believe that you want to know, and if there's only one reason, it's because if you don't know what's going on in their world, you're handicapped. So
Yes.
you really need to know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think I think the next thing that is really important, is to figure out very quickly what's working and what isn't. And the way I suggest you do that is, if you're having coffee meetings with folks, and the other thing I need to mention is speak to people one on one a lot in those first 30 days. Um, the worst thing you could do, I think, is to bring the whole team together and just speak at them as an audience. You need to get people alone. You need to ask them questions like, what's keeping you up at night about this project? Um, what do you think we're doing well? What do you think we're not doing so well? And of course, this applies if you're coming in the middle, which is more than half of the time you get assigned to a project. You're coming in right in the middle of a pre-existing initiative. So if it's pre-existing, ask, like, what do you think we're doing well? What do you think we're not doing well? A lot of PMs believe that if they're parachuted into a project, that nothing was being done well. And that's really offensive to the people who are already there. So I always start with, well, what's working? And then I go on to, well, what's not working and what's keeping you up at night? And you walk away. If you talk to, let's say, 10 people on the team and you have coffee and they all tell you what's keeping them up at night, you will walk away with a wealth of information, not just about the project, but about the organization and the people who are in it. And some people are being kept up at night because, Bob is a really nasty person and they don't like interacting with Bob, right? Or Jenny is a slave driver. You're going to get all of that out of that conversation, and it's so valuable.
And I think you want to be careful because there is a bit of a bear trap there as well, because they may be desperate for somebody to offload to.
This is true. Yes, be very aware of. So my personal style is to be more coaching and enthusiastic, and if that is the style that you guys have who are listening right now, you have to recognize that if you're not careful, um, people can use you, right, for their own political will. And so if they hate Bob or Jenny, They're trying to recruit you. So you got to be very careful about that, and always try to be as objective as you can about all the things you hear people say.
Yeah, stay
Yeah.
neutral until you've
Yes.
made a decision.
Yeah. And even then, stay neutral. Because at the end of the day,
No,
one of the
no,
things
I'm gonna put no. I don't agree with that.
you
Sometimes
don't,
you've got to understand. Sometimes you've got to say, no, this is rubbish. No, this is we can't. But you've got to have
yeah,
fitted in first.
yeah,
You've got to choose your moment. But sometimes, if you want to stand out, you've got to stand out strong.
yeah, yeah. There's
And
definitely a time for that. I think, I think what I'm trying to say there is, not that I'm trying to save my comment, but what I'm trying to say there is, that sometimes there's a way for everyone to get a little bit of what they want,
yeah,
right? And so it doesn't mean for one side to win, the other side has to lose. And that's
the
all that
old
I'm saying with that. Yeah,
get the win-win in.
that's right. That's right. Um, and then I think the final thing, is involving people in your plan. I think one of the things that people think they need to do when they start a new position is, they need to be the one to figure out how to fix everything. And you know what? I want to say more often than not, you're probably not equipped to fix the problem in the first 30 days. You don't know enough about what's going on. But what you can do is you can take what everybody is telling you and incorporate it all and try and figure out the best path forward. Don't come up with it on your own. Come up with your plan and your way forward based on the feedback that everyone who's been there, who's in the environment, who understands what's going on, but piece all of those good pieces together. And I think part of being excellent in those first 30 days is noticing which little nuggets of information are you gleaning that are good, discarding the ones that aren't, keeping the ones that are, and putting that plan together. And I think the other thing that the other benefit that comes out of involving others in putting your plan together is that they will see themselves reflected in your plan of action, and automatically they will start to become advocates for your plan. And so for me, I think involving people in your plan and not trying to go it alone or solve these problems in a vacuum is definitely the way to go, especially in those first 30 days.
And I think also, sort of just building on that a little bit, Jason, and you sort of alluded to it, but I want to pull it out because it's really, really important, is speak their language. Because
Yes.
your plan will be the language of your last assignment or your historic experience rather than the context. And
Yeah.
so they've got to understand, that you're talking their language and using their terminology fit within that bigger picture, and then they recognize it as their own. And what I really like about what you said there is that it is their own, and they've got to agree with it if that's what they said they want to do and how they want to contribute. And it's shared ownership. It's shared ownership, and then you're setting yourself up for the longer term because you're going to be able to just maintain them then,
Yeah.
and you just got to already got them on side. So I really like that point.
Yeah. Yeah. It's worked well for me, I'll tell you. So, that's why I'm offering it up to folks. Remember how at the beginning I had said, "Hey, let's spend about 10 minutes on goals." We're at 12:39, and we haven't gotten into the pitfall. That's the most important, or not important, but the most interesting part of the conversation is what are some of the things that, we would like to see you avoid. So Colin, I remember when we were talking about common mistakes, you mentioned something that just it hit me like a ton of bricks, because it
Okay.
was so counterintuitive, and that was you had said, one of the biggest mistakes people make is doing their job too well.
Mm.
Tell us all why that is such a problem, and what do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is that most people going into a new role, and I would imagine this applies to a project manager, program manager, new job, sales manager, any job, has a notion of what the job is. And 99 times out of 100, particularly at middle levels, it will not include the things that will get you fired. All right, because you've got to do what we were talking about earlier on with the goals. is not necessarily part of what you conceptualize as being your job. So if you go in there with the brief, the new boss has said, here are your objectives, go for it. And this is what I paid you to do. This is what I've hired you to do. Go on. And they wind you up, set you off with those objectives. And you go and start trying as hard as you possibly can in an alien environment, not really knowing who to talk to, but you've got the brief. Oh, that's what I've got to do. That's what I've got to do. I can't ask the boss either because he's busy and he's gone off somewhere else. So I'm going to do it, do it, do it, do it, do it, without stepping back and doing the other things we've already talked about. And
Yeah.
I think that drive to perform, that drive to shine, those are the objectives. I've got to nail them in the first couple of months and things like that, is a distraction from doing all of the other things that will help get you through the 30 days, the 90 days, and make you really shine and really fly in the long term. So, it's a slightly tongue in cheek, but if you conceptualize your job as being everything that we've already been talking about, then fine, do it really well.
Yeah.
But you've got to have that broader view of what your job is.
Yeah. I think, I mean, I've seen people do that a lot. And I think folks who are a little less open and a little less people oriented, that they're more prone to doing that. Like, just let's get the job done that we were told to get done.
Mm. I
But
could
I,
give you a quick example if you like, because
absolutely.
I've been recently coaching new into a company. He hired me because he wanted to get off to a flying start. And from the get go, I was sat in the background making sure he did all these other things,
Mhm.
by saying, yeah, but what's going on around your role? What's happening over there? Have you thought about this? What about that bigger ticket strategy? And he has told me, I've lost count of the number of times he's told me that that is what has kept him there. And within 6 months, he got rated as an exceptional performer at a
Yeah.
senior level in one of the biggest companies in the world.
Yeah.
And it was because he was doing the other things apart from his strategy. I mean, he still nailed the strategy, but there were some things that arguably he didn't do as well on his initial remit that wasn't actually even wanted anyway, once he'd worked out what the context was.
Yeah.
So I think and that's a really good example of somebody who took this on board, what we've been talking about thus far, and has got a stunning result, and he's still getting the result because that's now part of his natural way of doing things. And I think that's a testimony to not doing your job too well. No, doing your job too well, but don't concentrate too much on it at the expense of all the other.
That's right. We've got a question from Adam, and Adam, I'm not quite sure I understand your question, so I'm going to ask you to sort of try and type it out again. You're asking, doing a better job, even a mistake as a PM or an assistant. What I mean, I'm going to try here. Maybe what you're asking is, if you're an assistant, like a PA, as opposed to PM, is that advice still applicable? And here's what I would say about that as a project manager. Um, I still need my PAs to get and understand the world around us, because what I really want with my PA, and I call my PAs not at assistants, project assistants, I call them project analysts, because the very first thing I do is I try to train them on how to analyze the project, the data that's coming in, and even analyze, like when we're sitting in meetings, we're going to have that conversation after, like, did you notice this? Did you notice that? I want them to be just as aware of the political landscape as I am. Will they be as good at that as I am? No, because I've been doing it for 20 years, and most of the PAs that I work with maybe have been in the job a year or two, because it's a sort of an opening, a beginning role. But I would say it's important, but Colin, I don't know if you would agree, but maybe not as important, because there absolutely is an administrative function that a PA needs to do. And we do want them to be very good at that as soon as they start the job.
I would say the most. I mean, I definitely agree with you on everything you've just said, but I would add that the very best performing assistants, whether it's a project assistant, personal assistant, or whatever, can predict their boss's next move.
Well, yes,
And the boss
absolutely.
really loves. because they
Well,
don't have to think about it. You're working as a team then. And the
yeah,
other thing that you potentially have got, and I think it's more about how much time you devote to those broader things. You know, the more senior you are, the more time as a proportion of the whole needs to be put to them because of the complexity. But the other thing is, you could be the boss's eyes and ears. You could be the
absolutely.
boss. If you get the relationship right, you could be the boss's devil's advocate. Well, I may be junior here and stupid here, but I've just heard this.
Yeah,
What does that have to do with this? And the boss is, bloody hell, I didn't hear that.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So I want to be cautious because if you, let's say you were a project analyst and you were working with a project manager like me, I absolutely want you to be trying your hardest to understand the politics, to be challenging me. Like, do you really think that's the right thing? I mean, did you hear what so and so said yesterday? And work with me as a part of a well oiled machine, like a good team. Not all PMs are going to welcome that. Some of them really do just want their admins to do the reports and not get involved with those sorts of things. And you don't also, so you don't want the PM you're working for to feel like you're trying to do things other than what they want you to do. Having said that, if you're not working for a PM that's looking to coach you and help you kind of build your skills such that you can move on into that junior PM role, then maybe it's time to start trying to figure out how you get on some other projects. Let, if you have a little capacity, let your portfolio director know that, like, I've got some capacity, you can put me on another project perhaps, and you may get hooked up with a PM who does appreciate that kind of thing from you.
And you really need to make sure there's some. I think it was Robert Greene who wrote the Rules of Power. I think one of his edicts or rules was never outshine the boss. And what we're talking about here, maybe your boss doesn't even get,
Yeah,
or hasn't done before. So just be cautious with that one.
yeah, I agree. I agree. All right, so let's come back to um, the next common mistake. And I love this one, Colin. So I won't go into it or steal any of your thunder, but you had talked about the work speaking for itself. What
Yeah,
exactly,
I
or
think
assuming that the work will speak for itself? What exactly does that mean?
very yeah, this is a very straightforward one, and I think everybody will recognise this, particularly if most of the audience is coming from a more technical orientation. There's this great idea that my work needs to stand on its own 2 feet and speak for itself. I will be judged by the quality of my work, head down, technical, get it done, and it is extremely rare that that is ever true. We'd like to think it would be. Of course, we'd like to think it would be. But particularly as you get further up the ladder, that is less and less true because your work will speak for itself, but only if you position it well within the wider environment, the wider community. So you've got to be your PR person as well to be able to represent the work that you're doing and give it a fair hearing, because if you're not careful, somebody else might steal it, might steal the glory, or
That's true.
might just ignore it, or all sorts of things. So if you just rely on the output that you are producing, there are some very significant risks, particularly if you want to get on well, you want to get noticed, you want to maybe work for promotion and thing or greater responsibility. You've got to learn this whole thing about PR, and technical people hate it. They don't like this PR. They don't
Yes.
like having to sell themselves.
Yep.
But you don't necessarily have to frame it in terms of you've got to sell yourself and aren't I good and go bragging all over the place. You can sell the work, but you have got to
Yes.
sell the work.
Yep.
If you
Yeah.
don't, you're at risk. You are at risk, and it's as simple as that. So again, all that we've been talking about above, and I hope you're starting to land some practical things that you can do, particularly the guy who's starting the new job tomorrow. But
Yep.
get those practical little gems out, because this is what a real call to action as to why you absolutely have to do it. Because you don't want to get to the end of 30 days or 90 days or 5 years and find all that hard work didn't get you anywhere.
Yes. Well, and I think a lot of people have been there. Um, and
We
I
all.
I would put it another way, assuming that the work is the only thing you're expected to have. Like how can I put this? There's two parts to you being successful. There's the work that you do and the relationships you build. And if you just focus on your work to the detriment of the relationships, you will find yourself going nowhere fast. And I can tell you, and here's the other problem with the folks who just focus on the work and don't pay much attention to the relationships, maybe because they think it's just too hard or too draining or whatever. If you only focus on your work, and the only reason people consider you to be a good team member is because your work is just wonderful. The first time your work isn't perfect, the first mistake you make, you have zero to fall back on. Zero. And I find that, again, my style is definitely more, visionary, big picture. I'm terrible with the details. And there are times when I make some pretty interesting mistakes. I'll use that word, interesting. But 9 times out of 10, people will say, "Oh, it's okay, Jason. We know, like, you've got our best interests at heart, and maybe that wasn't the best decision, but that's cool. Most of your decisions are great, so we're all good there." And that's because I spent a lot of time cultivating those relationships, right? Because I know my work can't be perfect every single time.
And it shouldn't be, because arguably, if you are only producing perfect work, you aren't trying hard enough.
Yep, absolutely. I want to share a comment. So Mr. Fife was saying that he's been there. He had a past supervisor say, "Des, you don't brag on yourself enough." And I was baffled. Absolutely, you do. You have to, especially in this kind of the work that we do, you have to be your own advocate, right? And you have
Yeah.
to understand a little something about marketing, right?
Mm. But you can also, what I've also found from experience is you can learn to find a way that is within your values and within your integrity. So it
Yeah,
doesn't mean to say you've got to become one of those odious loudmouth marketing type
yeah,
people. You know?
yeah,
But it is so important, and it's so important actually also for the success of your role. And I'll just give you one example of a team I worked with in London, and I was commissioned to go and help this dysfunctional, failing team of extremely intelligent, very well informed architects. And they were brilliant at coming up with perfect solutions that just didn't fit within the company because they didn't have the relationship. So they went down,
mm,
we've got to come up with a perfect solution. We've got to do our job really well. And they did it so well that the company didn't actually buy into it because, well, we accept that it's a perfect solution, but this is an imperfect world and it doesn't fit.
yeah,
So, no, can you engage with us, find out what our problems are, please? We don't want, sort of, Nobel Prize winners and things like that and scientists. We want something we can use.
yeah,
And so you can find a way to do it in your style that's comfortable for you so that you do it would be my
yeah.
tip.
And before, because I'm very conscious of time. Before we move on, I would say um, one of the ways you can do it without having to feel like a slime ball salesperson is if you just go back to what we were saying earlier, which is help people understand, like, help people trust you, show an interest in them. That really is all that's required. The more you talk to them about them, there'll be a point where you can then start talking a little bit about you and what you would love to be able to accomplish. And then suddenly people out there around you will start becoming your advocates. In fact, that's always been a part of my strategy. I really hate to, uh, I don't know, toot my own horn, so to speak. And I very much prefer to let everyone else take credit, but I've never actually been at risk of people not understanding or knowing how I contributed because I have a bunch of advocates all through the organization who say, you know what, if it really wasn't for some of that forward thinking that Jason put into this, we probably never would have gotten to this place. People will say that on my behalf. And so that's the situation, you really, I would say you should strive to create is, again, make sure that you build the trust with folks. And then once you've done a lot of listening, also share a lot with them about what your intentions are and what you would like to accomplish. And you'll find that people start talking about you in a very positive light.
And then it becomes easy.
Yes, absolutely. You don't have to be a salesperson. Um, all right, let's see here. And oh, this is so important. Colin, please work your magic and drive this point home to the audience here because we cannot say this enough.
Well, I think you guys probably do say it way too much, because
Well,
because most
so many of us come from technical backgrounds, right? We many project managers aren't people persons, and so when they get into these leadership roles, they're like, I don't do politics. Why is that a
well,
big mistake?
usually when I hear this, it's because people don't want to do the politics. They don't want to do it usually because they don't understand it. They don't understand how to interact with it, or they're scared of it. Um, but the problem is that the politics is the way the decisions are being made, either at an individual or a group level. And if you want to be effective in your first 30 days in a new role, you've got to really understand what is going on around you and how decisions and opinions are changing, how they're being informed. That is the politics. And to expect to have any group, arguably any individual, because you can argue with yourself about how to make a particular decision. That's still political behavior. But I think what most people start to get, or the reason why most people say this, is because of all the bad history they've had with it, with this topic or with this label. But if you think about everything that we've been saying thus far, you've got to build relationships. As soon as you get into a relationship with somebody, there
You're
will
in it.
be making inflow and people trying to influence a decision, even if it's just for you to like them or you to listen to them. There's still influence going on. There's still people trying to make decisions or get you to make decisions in a particular way. So it's happening anyway. So my advice here is quite simple: is accept that it's going to happen, accept that you're not going to try and do it in a bad way and hurt people. All
Right,
right, because I think that's a high integrity approach, and then focus on, so how do decisions get made around here, and forget about the politics.
right.
Because I tell you what, the other thing I know is that there's two things. Everybody who says that doesn't actually not do politics. They're actually
It's
doing it. They
unavoidable.
just don't see it
Yeah,
as that.
yeah, it's
Because we're
unavoidable.
all trying to get people to like us or respect us or want to be with us, or so
Yeah,
there's still. So I don't believe you anyway. And the other thing is, and this is where it gets really Machiavellian, and I've seen this any number of times, people using this phrase as a disguise because they know they really do the politics, and they don't want you to think that they do.
yeah. I think I've known a few like that as well. I
Oh, we don't do politics around here. What was
Yeah,
really going on there?
yeah, exactly. That was your first clue, right?
So I would say, in summation to that is, you know, don't even think that phrase. Just get on and find out how decisions are being made and get ready to engage with it, the
Yeah,
decision making processes. And then leave all of that emotional stuff to one side. Just be very careful you're observing very
yeah,
well. Because if you've got that observation going on, then you'll be equipped to be able to help them make the right decision.
yeah. I want to
That's
put up
probably
a comment. So Cookout Northwest is saying, make as many as you can feel they're getting what they want. And I would add a little to that. I mean, I think you're headed in the right direction, but I want to make sure that because you have feel in quotes, what you really mean there is that you're actually trying to find a way for as many people to get what they want, recognizing that not everyone can, right? And but when people see you making an effort to try and ensure that everyone's getting at least a little something in the situation, they will all feel more comfortable with you in sitting in that leadership chair. Um, but I have seen some people do this very badly, right? Where they will, and I'm certain this is not at all what you were suggesting, but they will give lip service to folks. Oh yeah, yeah, don't worry, this isn't going to be bad for you. No, no, you're not going to lose any people in this part of the organization. And then of course, yes, you are. So, you got to be very authentic and truthful and honest.
mm,
But what I like to say about politics, because people seem to feel that politics, well, it has a negative connotation to it. I like trying to encourage people to say, you know what? politics is really just all about recognizing that everyone around the table is a human being and they all want something just a little bit different out of the situation. So wouldn't
Mhm.
it make sense? And if you're interested in these people genuinely and you care about these people genuinely, why wouldn't you find a way to make it so that everybody gets at least a little something of what they want,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, what I've done is years ago I wrote the ethics of influence, not a book, but a bit of a model, because most people will say it's politics when it's dirty and I don't like it, and it's influence when it's constructive and I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah,
Right? But exactly the same behaviors are going on. And the way to actually make sure you're playing it straight is to focus on the decision making process that the other person that you're trying to influence is making.
yeah,
And if you treat them as you would want to be treated, fully informed, the pros, the cons, really what you're trying to do then is help them make a good decision that hopefully will be working for you as well. Because if
mm,
they've made a good decision, they've been told all they need to know to be able to, they won't go asking other people, they'll trust you. And then you've got a decision that will probably endure and they'll fight tooth and nail to keep.
yep,
So
absolutely.
it's endurance. It's harder work, takes a bit more preparation, but that's the way to do politics.
Yep, I 1,000% agree. And Cookout Northwest is saying absolutely right. So yes, he's suggesting that, like we're suggesting that you try to find a way for everyone to get a little bit of what they want. So
Mm.
we
Or if not, have that open dialogue. This isn't going to work for you. This isn't going to happen.
yeah,
But what can we do to soften the blow or have an authentic conversation? Sorry, mate,
yeah.
we can't do that.
Well, yes, and again, people will appreciate that that openness, right?
Yeah,
To say, I've heard, if they get that you've heard them, you understand them, and yet you've been very upfront about, I'm sorry, but that's not something I can accomplish for you in this process, right?
I've
Um,
never met a person. I've never met a person who, if they're really honest, doesn't accept that they can't always get what they want.
yeah, but if you leave it ambiguous and you don't really go there because you don't want to have that uncomfortable conversation, and you leave them to
I
figure out they're going to be disappointed, yeah, you're doing yourself a disservice. So I would say, we are just 2 minutes past the hour, and I'm just going to check with the audience. We've got, well, we've got a fair decent number of people on. So if I want to ask you, Colin, are you good to go for maybe another 20 minutes or so?
yeah, certainly, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's
All right.
fine.
Let's see if we can. And I think the audience is willing to hang in as well. And hopefully, you guys are getting a lot of real valuable insight on this. Um, let's jump into a couple more. This one's from me. Opinions too early, and I think I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier. I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is they jump in, and as they're surveying the landscape, they make comments about what they think, like, "Oh wow, I would never have done it that way," or "Oh my goodness, who made that decision?" Um, I, I hear people do. If people are senior project managers, do this all the time. They have no idea that the person who made that decision is sitting right across the table from them. They're already putting themselves in a position where they're having to dig themselves out of a hole. And so, if you don't understand, like if you're sitting in a room and you look around the table and you don't know each of those people intimately, be very careful about the opinions you're putting out there, especially in those first 30 days. And so what I would say is reserve your opinions. And I know that's hard because when people are first arriving on the scene, they want to demonstrate how smart they are and what a difference they're going to make. But in their sometimes they get a little overzealous, and in that process, they're literally digging themselves a very early grave.
Yeah. Can I add one important point to that, Jason? Because it's absolutely right what you're saying, but there's a very common trap that people can fall into, and I think you need to be prepared for this. When the boss or another stakeholder turns around to you and says, "So, you've been here 10 days, what do you think? What are your
Oh no!
first impressions?
Oh no! What do you do?
What do you like here?" And if you do know, or you've got your opinions,
Yeah.
then of course you're going to press them.
Yeah. You
And
know
then
what
they
I
go, oh, okay.
you know what I tend to do, because that's a dangerous situation, right? 10 days in, right? Or even 5 or whatever. What do you think? What I tend to say is, well, what I think I heard was this. I heard people say this. I heard people say that. I heard people say another. And then you say things like, if that's true, then I think perhaps this. Notice how that sort of helps you not be totally committed to that opinion. Because again, you have no idea whether your boss sitting across from you is one of the people who made that terrible, horrible mistake that you may be talking about. And so, yeah, I was just, I heard this, I heard that. And then they can come back and say, well, that was incorrect. And then you've learned something about your
Uh,
boss, right? And how
you
they
see,
feel.
I end it with a question.
Yeah.
Well, I've heard this and heard that. What should I be making of this, boss?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And that's
Well, what do
another
you
really,
think?
that's a really good, a good thing to remind people. Open up to your boss and talk to them about stuff. Remember earlier we talked a bit about observing around the table. Um, there's nothing wrong with saying to your boss, hey, I kind of noticed that there was somebody that was sitting there that didn't seem plugged into the conversation. They didn't ask anything. What do you think's going on there? And it's not a dangerous question, because you're not accusing anyone of anything or whatever. You're just genuinely interested in what you think. Now keep in mind, you're going to get your boss's opinion of it, which may or may not be the truth, but at least you're starting that dialogue with your boss. And the other thing that I think we should always remind ourselves is, our boss may not have it all figured out either. Maybe they just need a moment to sit and really think through the dynamics of the situation. And oftentimes, what I find is the people that I work with, they thank me for having those. They're often late night discussions after work in the office. Like, what do you think was going on there? And they will often thank me for that and say, you know what? I love being able to just throw these things against the wall with you. I feel like we work really well together. So open that door, right? Open that door. And I just want to share with you, um, Cookout has a really great example of something you can say to that question. Well, what I think is, I'm excited about the future and growing with the company. I suppose that might work, but it almost feels a little bit like you're redoing the interview there. Um,
Well, yeah. But also, I would suggest that if a boss asks that question, they're asking for a very good reason, and it's not to hear necessarily that sort of response. They want some intelligence from you. They want to know what you're picking up, and I think I mean, that would be a good defence.
yeah,
I think it give you time to think, so
yeah.
have that one in the back pocket.
You'll probably get the reaction that's, okay, that's pretty cute, but no, tell me what you think, and then you're back to square one. Yeah. So
But again, I like what you're saying, suggesting there, Jason, about get that dialogue going, get that relationship warmed up so that you are sharing without pinning yourself to the wall with particular opinions.
yeah, absolutely. So the next thing that I would like to point out is that I think people, especially in those early days, are afraid to say that they don't know. And that
Mhm.
gets you, not being willing to say that when that is in fact the truth, gets you into an awful lot of trouble. Because then you start, doing the song and dance. Well, you don't know the answer, but you're coming up with one on the fly. Again, you're digging yourself a ditch. And a lot of times people will say, "Oh, I don't want the team to think that they brought someone in who doesn't know what they're doing." But I would say that most of the time, human beings look at a leader who says, "You know what? I don't know, but let's dig into this together." They actually feel way more comfortable with that kind of leader than the leader who
And
thinks they know but they don't.
and the set piece response to that as well is, or way of framing it in your own mind, I think, Jason, is that I know an awful lot, but I don't know quite how it would fit here yet.
I like that.
So can
I like that a lot.
understand a little bit.
To everybody, take notes on that one. That one's a good one. So no, very, very good. And then I think to wrap up the common mistakes, my final one for you guys is um, people will sometimes be overly concerned about being liked in those first 30 days. And so they'll be very friendly and very accepting of all the information that people give to them, as opposed to being more objective about what's happening or what they're being told. And you need to remind yourself that although you probably in your being, you do want people to like you in your new role, in your new job, that isn't in fact what you're there for. Now, you can be likable from day one. And of course, I fully recommend you are likable. And your first step to that is, and I keep going back to, show that you genuinely care about people. But beyond that, don't spend a lot of time trying to become everybody's best friend, because you will waste time. And then you will also get yourself into a situation where now you've taken a whole bunch of sides in a potential argument, and you have no way to reconcile any of that. So you need to keep a little bit of distance being in a leadership role. And also you need to project sort of this air of, you know, I like all of you, and I will be nothing but open and honest and upfront with you because I respect you and I care for you. But you don't want to exude that whole "and I want to be your best friend" vibe, because it can work against you, especially in those early days.
Particularly as you don't know the politics of the relationships around you at that stage. So, but the other thing that I would add to that one, Jason, is that there are other objectives as well, such as, number one is to be accepted, to fit in.
Yeah.
That's not being liked. That's not the same as being liked. Another one is
Yes.
being respected.
Yeah.
And so there are other different goals that can get you a long way towards building relationships without the obsession, which is quite natural, on being liked, as you say.
Yeah. And we have a comment here from Mr. Fife, and he says, yeah, being overly liked seems a lot like playing politics too much. You have a job and a goal to do at the end of the day. Absolutely.
Sucking up to the new colleagues, you could say.
That's right. Don't be a suck up. Nobody likes a suck up. So this is where I'd like to turn to let's get more practical and really help people sort of think about what can they do tomorrow. Let's say tomorrow they're starting something new, and one of our viewers today is actually starting something new tomorrow. um, Colin, if you could you tell us a little bit about well, actually, first let me introduce it. You've written a book called Project Manager's Guide to Influence. I'm showing that on the screen right now. And I remember reading that book 5 years ago. And I have to tell you, with each page, especially when I love how you start the book with, "And here's the world you're living in right now, Jason." I felt you were talking to me. Here's all the problems you have. I'm like, yes, I have that problem. Yes, I have that problem too. He knows what my world is like. This is a fabulous book, but what's great about it is that it gets into, some real practical advice on what can you physically do tomorrow to sort of put all the things we talked about today into practice. Would you mind talking a little bit about the system that you have in this book?
Yeah, and I think it's really important to focus on the system. But I've forgotten this until you started talking there. But my first practical advice in that book is to, if you're in a hurry, go to chapter 14 or chapter 13, because
which
there's
is
a
where we're
summary.
which is where we're taking you now, right? Yeah, absolutely.
In a way, because what I think is important for everybody to realize is that an increasing percentage of their role and of their time is about influence. So with all of the other parts of your job, think about this entry into the new role as being, what is it you want to influence? in the first 30 days or in the first 6 months or whatever. So, in the book, I take people through a process of getting really clearly focused and on their
Mhm.
work as an influencer. So, I came up with this 6 word sort of process that really informs the whole of the book. Is number one, be very clear about what it is you're trying to influence. So, your focus. Most people, in my experience, particularly when I first start working them, have got some vague aims. Oh, I want to make a good impression, or I want to get on off to a flying start, or things like that. No, specifically, and you may not be able to nail this on day one. You may need a couple of days to get your feet under the table and start to understand the lay of the land. But come up with, dare I say it, some goals, some specifications that would meet the project management discipline. So as a project manager, what are your deliverables over the first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, or whatever, because that then helps you to shape what happens next. And the next thing is, once you are clear, and you may have 3 or 4 of these at any one time, but for each individual goal, you do this process for each. Then you can start to, when you're clear, then you can start to identify. So, who are the key people around this? Who are the people who can help or hinder me the most? At senior levels, we're looking at the powerful stakeholders, the directors, and all the people around that organization. If you're just in a team, it's obviously your team colleagues that are going to help you get off to a good start, or whatever it is you're choosing to focus on. But you've got to identify who the real stakeholders are. Because when I'm coaching people through this, quite often they're focused on the wrong people for their goal, for what they've chosen to focus on. So it really
Yeah.
helps to get this into a lot more crystal clear focus so you can save time. And again, at a new role, in a new job, perhaps in a new organization, this identification could be the work of a week or so. Whilst you get to know who the people are around the organization, start to meet them and start to work out who are the powerful people. So it may take a little while, but you've got to nail who you've got to influence effectively, or who you've got to stop influencing against you, which is another, so negative
Yeah.
stakeholders. And once you've started to get the runners and riders, and I usually recommend coming up with sort of 8 to 12 key people that will make a big difference to your chosen focus, chosen goal, then you've got to analyze them. And in the book, or I mean, if people wanted, we could do it on another of these live sessions. You've got to have a framework to identify where those people sit in terms of your relationship with them and whether they agree or disagree with what you're shooting for. And that
Yeah.
then helps you to lay out the territory that you've got to negotiate.
So I'm coming back into the picture here, and I'll take us back to the
I know you're
diagram.
cool.
But I just heard you say that maybe we could do another show where we go through this in a practical way. Would you be willing to come back and do that with us?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, see how the audience has responded to that. They might have all left by now. I don't know. I can't see,
No,
but
they're still here. I can see them on there. They're hanging out. Although I think it was
it's
Mr.
in,
Fife who was saying his only thing waiting for him is his lawn needs to be mowed. So thank you for sticking with us. We're more exciting than mowing the lawn, which is awesome.
but the point that I would make is, I would be happy to explore it because it's my life and I love it. But if
Yeah,
you go and buy the book, chapter 14 will nail it for you in terms of how to
yeah,
use this whole process. I promise you.
yeah.
And what I would also say is that attending to this simplifies your work of influence enormously and takes the stress out of it, because it makes it into, it's not one of those soft skills anymore. And project managers always look at, oh, influence, that's a soft skill. It's only a soft skill because you don't know the processes. And here's one of them. So you get to analyze, you look at particularly the relationship, which is featured very highly in all of our conversations today. If you've got a bad relationship with these stakeholders, you've got a problem. But you need to be cognizant of that problem and therefore starting to think about, so what action can I take to improve the relationship with that particular individual who is very material to me delivering on my objectives here. And
Mm,
as you're doing that process, and the book goes through almost like in a coaching process way in the detail, it will help you to figure out what the plan needs to be. Obviously,
mhm,
from the book and from here, I can't tell you what that plan is, but what I can tell you is that as you do the analysis, some of the screamingly obvious things will pop out. Things that will completely turn. I mean, I was coaching one guy, and we did the stakeholder map and did the analysis. And the one question I asked him was, so what one thing could you do that would completely transform your prospects here of achieving your goal? And he sort of rubbed his chin and he looked at the map and he's, hire a project manager. And that we have a project manager on this. I said, well, how can you do that? Well, we've got it in the budget. We just never got round to it.
Oh my goodness.
And I saw
That's
him a
funny.
month later, and it had completely transformed. Influence isn't difficult. We make it difficult by not adding to it.
Yeah, I would agree. I've been using this system now for the 5 years since I read the book, and I can't tell you um, how. I'll tell you where the real value is for me, and I think a lot of the folks here who are with us today might feel the same. The process is it's dead simple. I mean, all you're saying is, what do I have to accomplish? Who are the people that I have to sort of work into the overall plan? And what is it that I have to do with these folks? Like, are these people supportive of the project? Are they not supportive? I don't think anyone would go, "Wow, I never thought about that." But just going through it systematically, it makes sure that you do pick up the phone and make that call, that you do go and book that coffee date with someone who may be feeling like they're losing a little bit of power because of the project that you're about to, embark upon, and learn about their world and what's going on there. Like, it's just an organized, simple, easy way to remind you that this is the work that you also have to do. And please don't forget it while you're trying to do your technical job, right?
Yeah. I mean, as you know, Jason, I've done quite a bit of work with the Project Management Institute over the years, and a lot of them say that why isn't this in PM BOK and things like that? What? I haven't influenced that one particularly yet, but there's only 6 words. And if you just have this by your desk or in your folder, just when you're reflecting on things aren't going terribly well, just think, okay, so what do I need to influence to shift this problem?
Yeah.
And it might not be your deliverables on your project, but it could be, well, if I could get that particular individual on side, so my influencing goal is to influence that person to become a raving fan or an advocate. What does that actually mean? And the process will take you into actually what would the evidence be of that individual totally supporting it. Okay, so who can help me? So who is around that person who might present my case, who might
Yeah.
that individual might turn to for, well, what's Jason up to? Is he any good? So if you can start to identify those, you may not be able to reach the target, but you start to influence the people around it. And then you can say, okay, so do I know them? Oh, bloody hell, I don't know any of them. Well, you better get on with it then.
That's
And some,
right.
I remember doing this at the Institute of Directors when we first came up with this model, and we had a project manager who was leading a project out of Paris, and in the Institute of Directors in London, and we had them all doing this process. And one guy was there scratching his head, and I went over and I said, "What's the matter?" I can't remember his name, probably Pierre or something like that. I don't know. But he said, "Well, I've got this project. It's 55 million, all right. And I know who my stakeholders are, but I can't put them anywhere on this grid." And I said, "Well, why not?" "Because I don't know any of them."
Oh,
"Well, who have you got?" And it was all the really senior people in the company, and he just had his brief and was just trying to deliver on the specification of his project.
yeah,
So he hadn't done any of this sort of, and he was very, very risky position to be in. But it
very.
informed the call to action. Well, you better start building some relationships around here, mate,
Yep,
because you're going to be
absolutely.
potentially when you get a problem, you're not going to have nobody to talk to, and you'll be straight out the door.
Let me tell you, Colin, like, and this is why I'm so excited that you're the very first interview type live stream that I've done, because what we are talking about right now is 1,000% the reason why PM Perspective exists. Because I don't think anybody, like you mentioned, this stuff should be in the PMBOK guide, but nobody talks about the soft skills. And it's the soft skills, ladies and gentlemen, that are going to get you into that senior project management realm. That's going to make you famous. It's going to make you remarkable. It's going to make it such that you're always getting into new and interesting things, and people are going to want to work with you. I haven't had to look for work in years. When I'm not contracting anymore, but when I was contracting, when a project was up, I actually had choices, right? Like, which project do I want to take next? Because people would seek me out. And it's because I do the soft stuff, right? I do
Mm.
this stuff that we're talking about.
I mean, and this is applicable to anything that you want to influence. So
Yeah.
if you wanted to influence your reputation within the industry, within the country, within your global organization, even within your
When
family.
your family, I was
On
going to
one work,
say your family.
somebody came up to me at the break and said, "Can I use this on my family?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And she had a problem with her mother-in-law. So we got it out in 5 minutes of starting to populate the map. I
Mhm.
know what the answer is. And
Yeah,
she worked out the answer in a coffee break. Just where she's okay, there.
that's funny. That is so funny. Yeah.
But it's good to hear you say that, but I would still come back and repeat, it is a hard skill that
Yeah.
nobody knows, that
I
can
do
make you
like
remarkable.
I do like that too. Yeah, you and I've had that exact conversation before. Yeah. So for those of you, I've had a few comments here, folks saying they're interested in the book. I'm going to put links in the show notes. To It's on Amazon, so you can click the link and pick up a copy for yourself. Honestly, it's one of my favorites. And I'm just so thrilled that I actually happen to know the guy who wrote it. So, but yeah, this has been really great, Colin. Where, if people want to know more about you and the work that you do, how do they reach out to you? How do they get connected to you?
Well, I mean, type my name into Google and you'll find me all over the place. But predominantly, I hang out on LinkedIn. So
Yeah.
I put a lot of things on LinkedIn. So just type my name into LinkedIn. I think I'm the only one pretty much in the world, so you won't mistake it. I mean, I think the picture, I have had some feedback, the picture's a little bit out of date. But apart from that, my website where my blog is, and it's a very active, I'm an active writer, is learntoinfluence.com. So just pop over there and subscribe. And what I'm trying to do with that is stimulate people to have a very strong independent mind, independent heart, and it's really for those that want to thrive at work and in life. And that's really what I'm all about now, Jason. As we were talking before the show started, I want to really help people. I mean, I've got a limited amount of time for one-to-one engagement, but just go and follow the blog because there's tons. I mean, during this pandemic crisis, I think I've written something like about 60 articles,
Mhm.
about what's going on and how people are responding to it, or how people could be. And I just love thinking about these things and helping people. So learntoinfluence.com, or track me down on Facebook or YouTube. Got a
Yeah.
YouTube channel as well.
Yeah. And then I would also say to folks, especially since Colin is offering to come back and talk to us again, maybe do a practical demonstration. Maybe I'll have to change the names to protect the innocent, but I'll take a current thing that I'm perhaps working with, and then you can coach me through the process. And then I'll set up like the cameras and you can
And
see
if we
me writing it down.
do that, Jason, and if anybody's listening now who wants to attend that, and this is not me trying to sell books, I don't need to sell the books, but if you've read the book first
That's a good
and
idea.
then see a demonstration, you will advance your practice way beyond, because the questions you will then have in your mind will be at a level way beyond.
Yeah.
So that's just a recommendation to get more out of these events.
Yeah, awesome. So we're going to wrap this up here. I'm looking at the comments, and I've popped in the questions that have come in and the comments that have come in as they come. I don't really have any other questions in the queue at this point, and maybe it's just because Colin, we're just that awesome. We just nailed it, and they have no questions at all. But what I'll say is,
I
for the, at
doubt
least
that. I doubt
for the next few weeks,
from
um,
myself anyway.
yeah, for the next few weeks, I will be monitoring the comments in this video. So if you have any follow-up questions, please leave them in the comments below. Or if you're catching the replay and you have questions, leave them in the comments below. And I will do my best to answer them. And Colin, hopefully I can involve you in helping to craft some of those answers. And perhaps maybe we can even bring some of those questions to the next episode that you and I do together,
Mm. But
which would
perhaps
be really great.
I could just say one thing to end with a top tip, or a top plea almost, for your sanity and your success, is that when you're contemplating your first 30 days, sit back and write down some objectives for you. What is it you want to try and achieve? and I'm not going to be any more specific than that. It's not just about getting into the job and seeing how it goes. What do you want to have achieved by the end of the 30 days?
Yeah.
And however good that is, it will be better than not doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So that is probably the most practical and easiest piece of advice. Um, and yet sometimes so hard to follow. So, but yes,
Sometimes you
please.
need somebody to bounce it around with, but
Yeah.
again, you get into that process of what's my focus, what am I trying to make different here?
Yeah.
Then you'll get, and if you can't do it for day one, day five, land those objectives.
There you
Your
go.
objective is to land them by the end of 5 days.
See, we're even giving you a little extra time to do it, ladies and gentlemen. So, like, no excuses. You've got to at least take a moment.
Normally, we're far more demanding than that,
That's right. So, all
but
right.
it
Well,
is Sunday.
Colin, I want to finish off by thanking you so very much for coming to speak with us today. I feel absolutely honored that you spent a whole hour and a half. We're at an hour and a half now, just speaking to the PM Perspective audience. I know that not only the folks who've been on the line with us today, but those folks who come across this video in the future are going to find this so very helpful to them as they try to build their career. So thank you so very much for your
Well, it's
time.
been an absolute pleasure, and thank you because you've contributed a lot to this as well, and I value hearing. Because with all of this, we may think we're awesome, but we're all learning all of the time. So I've picked up some tips from you as well. So I think that's really important, and I
Awesome.
think you can tell, and everybody else can tell. I've had quite a good time too.
That's awesome. Well, that means we can keep bringing you back. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. And we're getting some very helpful thank yous coming in from Sean. Here, let me just put that up on the screen here. Sean, this is your first comment. We got to get you some screen time. There you go. And thanks to all of you for spending an hour and a half with us on a Sunday of all times. Look forward to seeing you guys. Oh, here we go. Here's a few more, Colin. I've got to do this. This is just so important. Um, we look forward to seeing you on our very next live stream. Take care, everyone, and take care of yourself and take care of others. Talk to you
And
soon.
have an awesome week.
And have an awesome week.